From the WATE.com Digital Center, answering your legal questions, this is Ask Isaacs. Now, here's Lori Tucker and attorney Greg Isaacs.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a good Wednesday afternoon. I'm Lori Tucker, along with our legal analyst, Greg Isaacs, and we're talking about a disgraced former NFL player back in the news. He's been in trouble a lot before, but this is the biggie. We're talking, of course, about former NFL player Antonio Brown. You see his mugshot there, captured last week after spending months evading authorities. He's accused of shooting into a crowd after a boxing event in Miami last spring, resulting in charges of attempted murder. He was picked up by U.S. Marshals in Dubai and should be transferred to Florida at any time. So, Greg, before we get going on this, we managed to get hold of an interview with law enforcement in Miami. So let's get the latest on that.
Yeah, so we all know what occurred in May 17th of 2025, where there was a fight after a boxing match, and it led to a shooting. Well, our video retrieval specialist got together, they got video of the incident, and they were able to positively identify Antonio Brown as the shooter. Once we had this, our crime gun intelligence unit, along with our felony apprehension team, working with U.S. Marshals, working with Miami-Dade's state attorney's office, got together, built an arrest warrant, and located that he was at Dubai. We knew this because of his videos. He was posting videos, riding a bike, kind of like laughing at the city of Miami, saying, hey, I'm in Dubai. Maybe he thought that we couldn't extradite from there. But we worked along with Dubai police, and he was taken into custody. And sometime later, U.S. Marshals were contacted. They went to Dubai, and they brought him back to Essex County, where he was brought today and waiting to be extradited here to Miami-Dade County. Maybe he thought that by going to Dubai that we weren't gonna extradite him over. Well, this is just to prove that no matter who you are, or if you commit a crime in the city of Miami, we're gonna find you, we're gonna identify you, and we're gonna bring you to justice. In this case, we have done so, and we're gonna bring him to Miami-Dade County to face the charge of attempted second-degree murder.
All right, so there you have it from Mike Vega with the Miami-Dade Police Department there, talking about the very latest, proudly stating, hey, Brown may have thought, I went to Dubai, the extradition may not happen because I may be free here, but that's not always the case, clearly because of what's going on. Let's talk about extradition and legal entanglements here. He was extradited from Dubai, which is United Arab Emirates. The U.S. doesn't have an extradition policy with UAE, and he apparently lived in Dubai for several months. How were authorities, Greg, able to get him?
Well, there are two ways, and one, the saga of Antonio Brown is just never ending, and we'll touch on that. But yeah. Brown, six-time Pro Bowler, history of legal run-ins with the law, is implicated in a shooting that occurred outside a celebrity boxing tournament in Miami. And the timing of this is significant, and that's what the judge considered in a hearing releasing him on pretrial release. But after the shooting and before he was charged, Brown fled to Dubai. Okay.
And what does that say? I mean, this is before he is charged.
Well,
and we'll get into why there was that gap in just a second.
To me, it says a lot legally because, if you're not charged, you're under no legal prohibition not to leave the United States. So, Mark Iglarsh, his attorney, very deftly pointed out that basically he left after the incident and before he was charged, so his intent wasn't to flee. But when you talk about extradition, it's interesting how Brown picked one of the spots around the globe that are most difficult to extradite someone back to the United States.
And he was pretty much thumbing his nose.
Oh, he was posting things on Instagram, on social media, riding a bike, waving, smiling. Really
He's not doing that
remarkable.
now.
But again, Brown has always been a little unhinged. he had some legal trouble where he got into it with a moving company, was charged with felonies, with burglary, etc.
And didn't he effectively end his football career by just taking his pads off, his uniform, and just leaving the field?
Did the Irish goodbye. He's had bankruptcy troubles. He's had child support problems.
Yeah.
So, there's not a courthouse Antonio Brown does not love when he walks by it and he sees. But so what he did, he picked, there's 116 countries that have extradition treaties, but he picked one that they have an agreement with the U.S., kind of the fallback from an extradition treaty, a multilateral agreement. But it's difficult. You have to work with the authorities in the United Arab Emirates to get their permission and blessing to extradite. So he picked a place that would be difficult to get him back from. The police did what good police officers do. They interfaced with law enforcement in Dubai. Then that went up the government food chain protocol, and he was brought back to the United States.
How long did they have to work on this? I mean, this incident happened in May. He wasn't charged until June because the person who filed the police report and said, "Hey, I was grazed by 2 bullets. This is attempted murder." He waited until June to step forward.
Well, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But again, when everyone talks about extradition, the media gets excited and they talk about, are they going to fight extradition? Are they going to try to stay where they are? And once you're in custody in another state or another country, the law on extradition is relatively straightforward and not very complex. Now, what they do is in an extradition hearing, you have to prove 2 things: that there's an outstanding warrant, so the law enforcement in the host country where the person's staying verifies that there is sufficient legal process to hold the person. Then the second step is to determine that they are actually who is recited on the warrant. So it's Antonio Brown, Antonio Brown. Now, a lot of times people fight very vigorously because they don't want to go face charges in another state, in another country. So it's really remarkable how tenacious some of these extradition battles can come. The other thing that's unique, let's say in a state situation, we have the rendition clause of the Constitution, which compels states to turn over somebody that's committed a serious crime, such as a felony, to the other state.
And we report on that all the time.
Yeah.
State by state, where return the person to the place where the crime was committed.
And for example, in Tennessee, how it works, we're part of the Interstate Compact of Detainers, but prosecutors don't like detainers because the government has a specified amount of time to file the detainer warrant, make sure their ducks are in a row, give someone a hearing, or they are released. So
does that happen more often than we realize?
More often than you'd think.
Huh. Interesting.
So very interesting, but it's a procedural requirement that is easy to slip through the cracks, and if it slips through the cracks, it works to the favor of the citizen accused or defendant.
Let's go back to Antonio Brown and his attorney, who is of note, Mark Eiglarsh. He is claiming self-defense. He said, "Hey, the crowd got out of control. My client had no option but to do what he did." And then there's the other side of this, where you said Brown went to Dubai before he was charged. So how does that weigh in?
Well, Antonio Brown's lawyer has come out swinging, and what they did, Antonio Brown issued a written plea because he appeared via video in New Jersey. That's where
and he pleaded not guilty.
Yeah, when they apprehended him, they took him to New Jersey. Then you had the video feed with Dade County.
Why'd they take him to New Jersey?
Probably the closest place to clear customs.
Okay.
So
I was thinking he probably flew to New York from Dubai.
Right.
Okay.
So the lawyer does 3 things that were really smart. One, obviously entering a plea of not guilty is not rocket science or a brilliant chess move for a courtroom. But the other thing is he starts laying the framework and foundation for what Antonio Brown's defense is going to be. And he says this is a case where Mr. Brown was trying to defend himself. So, all right, we've already laid the groundwork. We've sent the telegraph out. This is a case of self-defense. So we're not going to dispute that Antonio Brown had a gun, shot the gun. We're going to say that he was in imminent fear of serious bodily harm or death, and he was justified in using deadly force to propel deadly force.
And so afraid he fled to Dubai.
And so afraid he fled to Dubai. But you know, good attorneys have answers to all questions like that, whether it's the judge or the media. And he said that basically Antonio, even though he was filed for bankruptcy, had routine business in Dubai. So he went there before he was charged, had no idea he was going to be charged. So that's amazing. Also, there was a hearing. Antonio Brown is released on pretrial release. He is required to wear a GPS monitor.
And he's been outfitted with that already.
Yes, he's been outfitted with that already. So remarkable that it took months for Antonio Brown. And again, he didn't turn himself in. You know, the marshals came and offered him a friendly ride back to the United States and put him in a jail in New Jersey.
Are you surprised that he's able to go free, even though he's being monitored?
Shocked, actually, because anytime there's any indicia of flight, I mean, obviously Antonio Brown, if I'm the prosecutors, knew that he was involved in a shooting, so that's not rocket science. He left right after the shooting on the 16th. So also, he has the means to travel internationally. I was very surprised that a judge, and he has prior run-ins with the law.
From domestic assault to not paying child support to other serious crimes. So,
Right. So, you know, interesting. It's not a surprise or a shocker here on Ask Isaacs or anywhere we're talking about a high-profile NFL athlete committing a very violent crime. You know, but unlike Mark Sanchez, whose case that gripped the nation a few weeks ago, where that case presents a lot of confusion and not a lot of method to the madness of the Sanchez attack on the truck driver. This one is just an old-fashioned fight outside a prize fight by celebrities, and it's going to be a self-defense case. So,
what do you think's going to happen? What's going to happen next? So Brown is on the way, if he's not already in Miami. What's going to happen now?
Well, what's going to happen now is, according to his lawyer, that he resides, quote, just down the street from his law office, and they are going to begin preparing Antonio Brown's defense. So here's what you're going to have. Somebody like Antonio Brown typically does not like structure. Under the federal criminal justice system, it is a very structured pretrial release, and you have a probation or officer or a pretrial release officer that you report to. With GPS typically comes geographic boundaries where you can go. Also, curfew is, I'm not sure about specifically, we've not seen the Brown order from the district court, but something that's there. So when you have somebody that's a rule breaker, not a rule follower, the last place that person needs to be is on federal pretrial release.
Very interesting. They went that route. So say he's found guilty. Will his past offenses be brought in to play to discuss what kind of sentencing he could receive?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But this, you know, when we talk about federal pretrial release, there's going to be some overlap because this is a state charge.
Right.
But the federal marshals went to get him. So that's one thing we need to look at very carefully.
Yeah, how does that weigh in?
It does, but both of them in a murder case are going to have very strict requirements, very stringent requirements and supervision. And, you know, the GPS is a very powerful tool that we see being utilized more frequently throughout the country, in East Tennessee, in domestic violence cases, in serious cases, and it's kind of that last resort between incarceration and bond or release.
Okay.
And, under the Constitution, everybody is entitled to a reasonable bail, and the purpose of bond or release is to reasonably assure someone's appearance in court. Therefore, that's why you have the GPS. But I just really was professionally surprised that the arguments of we don't have our passport anymore. Well, yeah, it was taken by U.S. Marshals. We promised not to go back to Dubai, and oops, we weren't charged yet, so we just thought that nothing was going to happen. Had legs and walked in the courtroom, and that defense worked. But that bodes well for Mr. Brown. But this case is long from over, so
Ballpark, what could, if he's found guilty, what kind of time are we looking at?
First of all, Antonio Brown is charged with attempted second-degree homicide. Second-degree, Florida, much like Tennessee, means a knowing killing of another. He would be facing up to 15 years in jail and up to a $10,000 fine. So it's a serious felony, serious charges.
All right. I want to ask you this because in the notes that your office loves to provide, and you do such a wonderful job with some background information, brought up the International Prisoner Transfer Program. Does that have an impact on this case, or did it?
Well, it could. There are a lot of mechanisms that are in place, whether it's a multi legal assistance treaty, they call them an MLAT, whether you are part of a quote treaty, but extradition treaties are really kind of archaic in the modern world. The first extradition treaty the U.S. entered into was in 1873 with Ecuador. I have no idea why Congress back then felt it was a priority to make sure that criminals, fugitives from the U.S. didn't flee to Ecuador to avoid prosecution. But then
that would have been a long trip back then.
It would have. And but then again, there are 116 countries. But if it raises the interesting question, if you want to avoid prosecution, where on the face of God's green earth do you go?
Well, and that begs the question, how do some fugitives manage to stay on the loose? There are some who are still on the FBI's most wanted list. They haven't been found.
Well, you could go to China, Indonesia, Iran, Mongolia, the Russian Slavic states. There's some countries that have treaties that just totally disregard them. Cuba, Switzerland, Venezuela, Zimbabwe. They say, yeah, the diplomats kind of signed this, but I'm kind of a dictator kind of guy, and we're not going to let you go back to the U.S. But really fascinating when you talk about can someone flee, whatever. But Antonio Brown, great football player, terrible at fleeing, because when you post on Instagram and social media your whereabouts and you're waving and riding a bike, it doesn't take the smartest U.S. Marshal in the world to figure out where to come get you.
Well, investigators with Miami, too, were on his trail. They were looking for him. They were serious about this, and they did not let up until they found him.
And again, and we talk about this almost in every high-profile case now, so far, what is the biggest, most persuasive piece of evidence? And it is video footage. So, I think what you're going to have more of, and they're going to be leaked, and it's going to be another slow drip as this case progresses, is video from outside that celebrity boxing event.
We know cameras are everywhere. You just can't escape.
You can't escape. And so it'll be interesting at how confidential this is maintained by law enforcement and by prosecutors. But, Antonio Brown, back from Dubai, now out on pretrial release and has pled not guilty.
We'll be watching this case. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to go over some notorious fugitives. These names will certainly ring a bell with you. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. A moment ago, we mentioned notorious fugitives. We're talking about extradition efforts. Among them, I'll just start off the list, Greg. Osama bin Laden, Ted Bundy, and Tennessee's own James Earl Ray.
There have been a host of people. One of recent note that was amazing because he would give interviews on 60 Minutes and whatever was the WikiLeaks.
Julian Assange.
Julian Assange. And he took refuge in a number of countries where there was not extradition treaties in place and was very open about his whereabouts, spent time in...
Kind of a catch me if you can.
Yeah. In the Soviet Union. Whitey Bulger, famous mobster. All these people have used flight very effectively as it relates to leaving the jurisdiction of the country. But what I'll say, it appears glamorous. When you see shows like The Fugitive and people that are running and hiding. But really, what typically catches up with somebody is not the brilliance or lack thereof of law enforcement. It's just they can't be quiet. They can't stay off social media.
That's the thing, social media.
Yeah, and typically what and I've had this happen in some cases, what law enforcement does is, there's this mental image of they're chasing these people all over the globe. Well, no, what they typically do is draw a tight circle around family, friends, girlfriends, and they wait.
Known associates.
They wait. See, there you go. You're learning how this being a fugitive works.
I'm getting the legalese from you all of these many years.
And they wait for the fugitive to contact somebody that they have the relationship with, and then they get that information extrapolated. They get IP addresses, find out the location, and go from there. But for all of that, one thing that's behind the scenes, and it happened in the Antonio Brown case, there's a lot of diplomacy that goes on behind the scenes when you find somebody in another sovereign and you go through the hoops of trying to bring them back.
Let's explain that, because the countries want to maintain a good relationship.
Well, they do,
so
but
you've got to work that.
They want to protect their sovereignty,
right.
and they just don't want people being taken from their country without legal justification. They want to see the severity of the offense, et cetera. Now, sometimes, like in the WikiLeaks situation, you'll find countries that are somewhat sympathetic to someone's cause, or someone that wants to rub sand in the eyes of the United States.
They literally offer protection.
Yeah, so they do. But a very interesting dynamic. But again, when you hear someone fighting extradition, it sounds sexy, and it sounds like there's going to be a big courtroom battle. And basically, it's not. Is this charging instrument legally valid? Are you Antonio Brown? Are we within the specified time limit? Because what they don't want is people languishing in jail awaiting the procedure.
And that does happen as well.
It does. And judges, I will tell you this, because if it's a case from another state, case from another country, judges and prosecutors are quick to pull the trigger if you didn't do it timely, because it's not their case, not their concern. Case dismissed. So,
wow.
A lot of interesting issues when you have an extradition process.
So again, Dubai said, take him.
Take him, which, the United Arab Emirates are kind of fickle when it comes to compliance. And, just like the Swiss are very fickle when it comes to compliance, notwithstanding an extradition treaty.
All right. Well, we're almost out of time. Thank you so much for being with us. We have a little bit of time. If you have any questions for Greg, go ahead and weigh in. You can leave them in the comments there, and we can do a live chat with you. So here's your chance to ask some questions. If you have any about extradition, or if you have ideas for a future live stream, we'd love to hear from you. So we'll go ahead and give it a few minutes. In the meantime, let's get you caught back up with what's happening with Antonio Brown. If you're just joining us, he is in Miami or on the way to Miami right now after being extradited from Dubai, accused of second-degree attempted murder.
Right, and will be released apparently on with a GPS requirement. So he will he was granted, reports say, pretrial release, which is remarkable. Let's talk about what Antonio, we've talked a lot about extradition, but what did he do to warrant the extradition? Again, it's not surprising to have a high-profile NFL football player to be involved in another high-profile violent criminal case. Sadly, Antonio Brown is accused of committing the offense of attempted second-degree homicide, which carries a penalty of up to 15 years in the state of Florida, based on an alleged shooting that occurred outside a celebrity boxing tournament
The bullets
in Miami-Dade,
grazed
Florida.
someone?
Yes, bullets grazed people. There was a crowd. And the lawyer, Mark Erglish, has pulled no punches. He entered a written plea of not guilty for his client, Antonio Brown, and has said this is a case of self-defense. So as this plays out in the media, we're not going to be him-hawing around on whether you can prove Antonio had a gun, didn't have a gun,
Right.
Did something.
He's saying, yeah, it happened, but I was protecting myself.
I was in imminent fear of serious bodily injury or death. This is going to be a high-profile case that's going to grip not only South Florida, but it's also going to grip the country because once again we see a 6-time Pro Bowler, remarkable career with the Steelers and other teams. But will Antonio Brown spend the next 15 years in a Florida penitentiary? That's the question that's going to play out in courts.
All right.
Miami.
Let's talk more at 5:30.
Let's do it.
Okay. Thank you for joining us.